Hello and welcome to episode 131 of Fergo and the Freak. I'm that bloke from Rugby League Project, Andrew Ferguson. You can find me on Twitter at AndrewRLP. And join me as always is the glorious League Freak. You can find on Twitter at League Freak. How you going there, mate?
I am beside myself today.
Beside yourself. Is there two of you?
Yeah, there is now.
Oh,
Because, and you know
epic.
why. This has outraged both of us to the point where we've immediately jumped online to do a podcast.
Yeah, and different to usual times when we do this, instead of doing 1 hour of unrecorded podcast beforehand, we've only been online for about 5 minutes and gone, no, let's just fucking rip in.
Just straight into it.
So let's get down to it. 2 hours ago, the English Rugby League have put out a brief news article with a little poll on there. So let's just read it out. As part of our 125th anniversary celebrations, we're asking the Rugby League public to vote on a number of greatest polls. Five players have been shortlisted by the RFL's 125 super fans. I'd like to know who they were. Before the winner will be decided by users of the RFL website and our league app. The vote for greatest player will close at midday on Thursday, the 13th of February, with the winner revealed in a special announcement at a later date. Who is the greatest ever rugby league player? Here are the names. Ellery Hanley deserves to be in the conversation.
Yeah, you've got to keeping in mind this is always going to be English centric, which, yes, of course, everything out of England is. You know, I mean, they're very important over in England. Just ask them.
Yes, Clive Sullivan, another player, phenomenal career. Definitely deserves to be in the conversation.
Yep.
Brian Bevan, a winger with an untouchable try-scoring record.
Yep.
Wally Lewis, he's an immortal in Australia, so definitely deserves to be in the conversation.
Yeah.
And Kevin fucking Sinfield.
Who thought that it was a good idea to even think about having him in this list? It's embarrassing, and I think that he would be embarrassed by it. I don't think it does anything for him. I don't understand what the whole thing about Kevin Sinfield is, because they run campaigns for him. They run PR campaigns for him, and I don't understand it.
Can I suggest one thing? Okay, to be shortlisted for such a prestigious title, I think you'd need to have a winning record at international level, as in more wins than losses, and Sinfield doesn't.
No, or at least be of some consequence at international level, which Kevin Sinfield never was.
Let's have a look, shall we, at the wins that Kevin Sinfield had as a test player. Okay, 2000, beat Russia. Then he beat Fiji. In 2001 in the Ashes series, the first test, Great Britain beat Australia. That's the only time in his career he beat Australia.
And wasn't he on the bench for that game? Or
he started at hooker.
Hooker, yeah, that's it. Because, even in his own era, he struggled to make the Great Britain team in his position at loose forward.
Yes. It was then 6 years before his next victory. And that was against France in 2007, then beat New Zealand in 2007. No, they were both for Great Britain. Then back to England for 2008, where they beat France. Papua New Guinea, 2009, beat France again, beat New Zealand. 2011, beat Wales and New Zealand. 2012, beat Wales. 2013, beat Ireland, Fiji, and France.
Wow. One of the 5 best players of all time right there. Unbelievable. What are they thinking?
34 tests, 15 wins, 18 losses.
That's crazy. And, struggled to break into the side as a loose forward.
Yeah, couldn't even get in there in his actual position.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
I'm absolutely flabbergasted. I mean, we've got 13 immortals in Australia. There's a swag of players that are on the RFL Hall of Fame, which Kevin Sinfield isn't. Mind you, he's eligible to go on there this year.
Oh, and they're going to roll out the red carpet for him when it happens, by the way.
There's players from other countries outside of Australia and England who have also been absolutely world class and the best ever in the game, in the history of the game, not even in the conversation.
Yeah.
Kevin Sinfield is. I just don't get it.
Neither do I.
I mean, the New Zealand Sports Hall of Fame. So this is not just rugby league. This is their entire Sports Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
They've got a bunch of players there. So they've got Albert Baskerville, who founded rugby league in New Zealand, basically partially introduced it to Australia.
Yeah.
Tom Baxter, Mark Graham, Stacey Jones, Seth Mountford, George Smith, Des White, Ruben Wiki, and there are others who are, deserving of being put into this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
France, I mean, Puigobert, he was regarded quite often as being Clive Churchill's equal, and Clive Churchill is regarded as arguably Australia's greatest ever player.
Mm.
And Churchill's not on the list. I mean, Puigobert was 5'2" tall and was regarded as one of the greatest players that's played the game anywhere in the world.
Yeah. And they've taken a player who didn't make a mark during an era for British Rugby League where they failed so miserably. That's what I don't get.
Yeah.
Like if we were taking our greatest players and taking them from eras where we were getting absolutely annihilated by Great Britain and New Zealand, it would be a joke if we did that. But Great Britain has done that, and they've said, hey, like, who was this expert panel? Because no expert panel, and I don't care how, there's people that are biased, and I get that, and this is always going to have an English slant, and I get that, but any expert that says that Kevin Sinfield is one of the 5 best players of all time, they should be disregarded, completely disregarded, because he simply isn't. I don't think he's one of the top 5 players of his era. He might not even be one of the top 5 players of Super League players that were around during his career.
I wouldn't even have him as one of the top 5 players for Leeds in the time that he was playing there.
Well, there was so many times where he just, whenever he come up against world-class opposition, he was of no consequence. None. There were players I think of someone like a Paul Sculthorpe, right? I think of Paul Sculthorpe, okay.
Yep.
Who was a loose forward as well, sometimes played out of position as well, and was very good in Super League. And against Australia did nothing. Did absolutely nothing. The contribution, though, that Paul Sculthorpe had for Great Britain, compared to the contribution that Kevin Sinfield had, it's chalk and cheese. Paul Sculthorpe's miles ahead of him. And no one's going to say Paul Sculthorpe's one of the top 5 players of all time.
No. I'm not saying that Kevin Sinfield was a crap player. He wasn't. He was quite successful. He played for a long career. You can't do that by being crap.
In England, though.
Regardless, you can't have a career that goes for 18, 19 years anywhere and be garbage. You got to be good to some extent. But the thing is, he should not ever be in this conversation of the greatest players ever, and not even in the top 100, not the top 2, 3, 4, 500.
No,
he was very rock solid, consistent player at club level. There's a ton of those players in the history of the game. That's where he was.
Well, just some of the Super League, just in the Super League era, some of the players that I would say have been better than Kevin Sinfield. And people know what I think of Super League players and English players in general. But just in the Super League era, Kieran Cunningham, and people know what I think of Kieran Cunningham, James Graham, Panface, Andy Farrell, Gary Connolly, there's heaps of them.
Gareth Ellis.
Yep, 100%. Paul Sculthorpe. Who else would be better than him? Look, if somebody said best players that have played in Super League during his career, I'm throwing Andrew Johns in there because he didn't play there for long, but he was better than Kevin Sinfield. I'm saying, who else?
Langer.
Alan Langer. He's definitely in there. Jamie Lyon.
Oh,
But
there's
Jamie
no.
Lyon, what he did in Super League was so far ahead of anything that Kevin Sinfield ever did in his
At,
career.
at that rate, you could almost throw in Pat Richards.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. What about Trent Barrett? He tore up Super League. It's
The other,
ridiculous.
I'll even go as far as saying the problem I've got with that list is look at some of the names that they've ignored just from the English RFL Hall of Fame. Who could have been on there?
Okay, go on.
Billy Batten, Billy Boston, Alex Murphy, Jonty Parkin, Gus Risman, Albert Rosenfeld, Jim Sullivan, Harold Wagstaff, Neil Fox, Vince Corralius, Roger Millwood. And that's just the first bunch of people that were inducted in 88, 89, and a
Yeah,
few in 2000.
yeah. What about Martin
Mal,
Offia?
Martin Afire. Mal Riley, Mick Sullivan, Albert Goldthorpe, Sean Edwards, Andy Gregory, Derek Turner, Lewis Jones. I mean, Jesus Christ, all of those players are miles ahead of Sinfield. It's not even close. And yet they're
Yeah,
all ignored. And
yeah,
we're not even looking at at players from any other country. How can they get this part so wrong when they can't even get the three or four best players from their own game, from the entire history of the game? And it's again, we're seeing this thing that we see it in Australia. And
mm,
every time you get these stupid polls come up, and you've got them for the Immortals thing as well.
yeah,
Everyone that played prior to World War II just practically didn't exist.
mm-hmm,
And when we had the Immortals add in, was it 3 or 4 players the last time?
mm-hmm.
I was amazed at how many people were, up in arms about the fact that Dave Brown and Dally Messenger both got inducted, and
Yeah,
Brent Birch, because
yeah,
no one's around to say how well they played, and we don't know what they were like, and what are we doing inducting blokes no one ever saw, and why are we having these many people in there going, no, they deserve to be there. You can
yeah,
only be judged against the people you played against at the time, and
exactly.
how you were regarded at the time. And
Exactly. And that, like
no
how they,
one,
what they were as players, it was recorded. We can't see it in video footage, but it was recorded in many different places. The records still stand today for a lot of those players, and it was just unquestionable where their standing was in the game.
exactly. And every single one of those immortals and every single one of these Hall of Famers had been talked about in the media at the time that they played as being the greatest in their position, or for some of them, the greatest of a generation, the
Yeah,
greatest ever.
yeah.
I don't recall ever seeing Kevin Sinfield being tagged with that.
No.
It's
I,
it's got me
I'd love
scratching
to
my
know.
head. I don't know. It says on here that they had 125 super fans were the people who come up with this shortlist. And
Idiots.
that alone is stupid, because if you're going to have a poll like this to celebrate 125 years, your goal should be to do it right.
Yeah,
You don't just get a whole heap of random people to talk about it, because, of course, they're only going to talk about the people they saw,
yeah,
which is why
exactly.
everyone on there played post World War II. If
And
you're
the
going
other
to do
thing is,
this, all they've got to do is just say, Tony Collins, give us a list of the 5 greatest players you think ever.
yeah,
And he just does that, and then everyone can vote after that. But just let him do the 5 greatest, because as we've heard from him, he knows this stuff better than anyone else, especially over there if they want to have the English slant on it.
mm.
Um, this is absurd.
Look, I'm happy for them to have an English slant on it
Yeah,
because
likewise.
that's what they do. You're not going to change them. You're not going to make them see sense. You're not going to make them think of the wider game. They're very egotistical in that way. They're very self-centered in that way. They're not the English Rugby League. They're the Rugby Football League. And it's always going to be that way. They're the center of the entire Rugby League world. Just ask them. And so, if they'd come out and said, oh, the greatest player of all time is Ellery Hanley, I'd have been like, yeah, that seems like something that Pom would say. But to come up with this list of 5, and see Kevin Sinfield's name there. I mean, it's utterly ridiculous, and it makes an absolute joke of whatever they're trying to achieve. It takes away from whatever they were trying to achieve. And, English Rugby League loves making a mockery of itself and then turning around and whinging when the rest of the rugby league world points finger at it and says, you're being silly now. And, then they go into their victim complex. I can't believe that anybody would allow that to come out. And I can't believe that somebody wouldn't get that list. And even if Kevin Sinfield was one of the top-ranked players from these 120 superfans, which I guarantee you'll never find these people. It's be like the Golden Point people, the Golden Boot people that vote. It's like just fucking nameless cunts. You know what I mean?
Well, I was going to say, this is just the Golden Boot all over again. When they rejigged it to try and make it more suitable so that English players could win it.
Yeah.
But nah, it's
and by the way, the complete opposite of the world rankings, where somehow Great Britain can get thrashed through an entire series, nothing happens to them, but Australia loses a game to Tonga and they drop down from being number one in the world to a team that they beat really, really handily. And how this keeps on happening. And you know what? This is why people don't take English Rugby League seriously. It's silly shit like this.
It irritates me so much because, one of the things that I set out to do as an historian is not sit there and talk up current players or players who everyone's seen play, but to try and tell the story of the players that no one saw and make sure that they're not forgotten. And some of their stories are unbelievable, astonishing, and they need to be part of the game's folklore and history moving on, and these people should be regarded as equals. That's why I'm such a big fan of pushing for Duncan Thompson to be made an immortal. He was that damn good.
Yeah.
But because the stupid argument is, well, no one saw him play, anyone who saw him play is dead now. Who gives a shit? We have a medal named after a bloke who played in 1908.
Yeah. And
England's got one. Look, Lance Todd, a Kiwi. He played in the same period as Daly Messenger, and probably a bit earlier than that. And they've got an award named after him. He's not even on the list.
Yeah, it makes no sense. And like the thing that I wonder sometimes, do you try and make sense of it? Like, do you try and explain why it doesn't make sense? Or are you just hitting your head against a brick wall with this stuff? Because it seems like time and time again, English Rugby League just puts out some dumb crap like this. And it never, the shoe doesn't fall. It just, they don't get it. They don't get it ever. And
I was going to say, look, I can't even put in an argument to say that Brian Bevan deserves to be there. As much as his try scoring record is fantastic.
Well, let's be honest, right? And this is through their entire history over there. Wingers score tries at a ridiculous rate. At everyone gets tries. If you're a winger over there, it doesn't matter how bad you are, you're going to get heaps of tries. And I'm not talking down Brian Bevan here. I'm just being honest. Like some of the try scoring records, some of the average players that have been over there in recent years. You look at how many tries like Leslie Vainicolo would score or Pat Richards would score, and it was absolutely ridiculous, So you can't go just on the try scoring records of these players in England, because anybody that can walk down a sideline, an English sideline, they're going to score 300 tries.
Yeah. I've never seen something like that before and felt so angered by it, because so many great players have been overlooked for someone who was handy in recent times.
And handy at club level.
Yeah.
Not really of any use at international level.
There are so many, and this is not even trying to be facetious or cheeky or anything of that sort of shit. There are so many players I could think of right now who are better than Kevin Sinfield as players. and
Well,
I would
James
not even
Peacock
put them
was
on
more
this list.
successful than Kevin Sinfield in Super League. I mean,
Yeah.
he won with the Bradford Bulls and then won with the Leeds Rhinos.
I'm even thinking of players like, James Tedesco,
Yeah,
Roger Tuivasa-Sheck, Jason Taumalolo,
Jason
and there's
Taumalolo.
and there's no way I'd be putting them on this list right now, but I'd have them all ahead of Sinfield.
Yeah, look, the only one that I would think of, a current player who I would definitely have to do some mental wrestling about would be Taumalolo. And I've said I think he's an all-time great. But he's probably halfway through his career, maybe not quite there yet. And, it's very difficult to line him up against, and at some point it comes down to achievements as well.
It does. But I
You
think for
know,
something like this, I'd be looking at people who changed the way the game was played,
well,
because they're the ones who are going to have the biggest impact. And you're
yeah,
looking
and
at people like Arthur Beetson.
yeah. Well, I look at Taumalolo like that. Like, this is a guy who was, he won a premiership pretty young for a forward. And then he says, I'm going to play for Tonga. And he takes Tonga from being just all right to beating Australia. And if he doesn't make that switch himself as the best forward in the game by a long way, right? In a golden era of forwards, by the way, if he doesn't make that switch, we're not talking about Tonga too much. They'd have a handy team, but it wouldn't be what he has single-handedly done. It's like Albert for France. Like, how often do we see at international level where one player comes along and they change things? And he didn't do it with one of the established nations. He did it with Tonga.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's just an argument right now for Jason Taumalolo. And as I said, if you and me sat down and made a list of the top 10 players, I would be extremely surprised if either of us had him in the top 10 or even in the top 20. There's
I'd
so
be
many
hard
great
pressed to
players in
put
this game's
any.
history.
I'd be hard pressed to put any player from the last 20 years in there other than Lockyer and Johns, and I don't think I'd fit them in anyway.
Yeah, I would probably say Lockyer, Johns, the other
Maybe
players
Fittler.
the other players I would think of, Fittler, Cameron Smith, definitely.
Yep.
I'm
Slater,
not sure.
Croc, Inglis, you could probably toss them in there first,
Yeah,
I guess.
I think Inglis would get in there. I think Slater would have to. I don't think Cronk gets near it personally. And then I'd be looking at players like Webke and Lazarus. And Lazarus is starting to get back into a bit of a different era. But that's just off the top of my head, the players that I would say would be from the last 20 years or so. I can't think of anyone else that's like a jump out. You know what? You might get a Steve Menzies argument in there because his try scoring record and what he did was pretty incredible for a forward. But that's it.
Yeah. As I said, I'd be going with players who changed the way the game was played. Wally Lewis, Ellery Hanley definitely were players you could fit into that era. As I said, Arthur Beetson, Duncan Thompson, Dally Messenger, Twiggle Burr. If you wanted to throw in someone current, then I'd be putting in someone like a Benji Marshall. And I'm not saying I would put him in there, but if that's what they wanted to do, I think Benji would be regarded as better than Kevin Sinfield, and he had a bigger impact on the game than Sinfield did.
100%. I mean, he won a premiership as a youngster with a
and
team
a World Cup.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Well, he wins a premiership as a youngster with a team which was basically like a rebuilding from nothing by the time he turns up there. And they build a premiership winning team around him and Robbie Farah. And then he goes on and he's like the superstar and I'm willing to say the one that the whole thing revolved around for New Zealand winning the World Cup. That's unquestioned. Unquestioned. And Benji Marshall deserves to be in the conversation. I mean, I look at that list and it's like even, and if you're talking about the top 5 players of all time, you can make arguments against the great Wally Lewis.
Yeah, I'd be hard pressed to put Wally in there. I think when you've got the likes of Messenger, Reg Gasnier, Johnny Raper, Graham Langlands, Bob Fulton. I just rattled off 5 immortals there, and I haven't even mentioned Clive Churchill yet.
Yeah, see,
and
for me,
are just Australians. I mean, there have been fantastic British players as well, and obviously, as I said, French and New Zealand. I can't argue for too many straight up modern day players when there's so many players who have had a long lasting legacy from the past, and that legacy only exists because they were that fucking good.
Yeah, like, I'll ask you this question, because I know what the answer is for me. Is the person that you feel is the best player of all time, are they on that list?
No.
Yeah, neither's mine.
And I don't know, it's just disappointing to see something like that. I wouldn't even, for me, and this is going on what clips I've seen and what I've read about. One player who seemed to take English Rugby League by storm, British player, was Billy Boston. And he came along as someone very similar to Reg Gasnier, just an explosive centre who could just put the crowd on their feet. And people still talk about him today. He's someone I'd have higher up there than pretty much most of the people on that list.
What about Alex Murphy?
Again, another great.
Yeah.
There's so many great British players that were around in the 60s and 70s too. I mean, they were the best club around, best team around them internationally. And that the 50s and 60s was at a time when international rugby league was possibly at its toughest, because for a period you had Australia considered as one of the best, and then France and Great Britain, all in the space of 15 years or so. It was that strong and that competitive, and New Zealand weren't that far behind. So there's so many great players just from that era there. And again, that is just after World War II. There were so many great ones before it as well, and the people pre-World War II just keep getting forgotten time and time again.
It's very weird. It's very, very weird. And it's documented how good they were.
Yeah.
That's the sad thing. It's not like there's lost records or something. We know how good they were. And it's not like there was a cut-off point. It's not like there was a 5-year gap where the game stopped being played. The game's always been played. There's never been this like big line in the sand where we say, well, it's this era and this era. It's all flowed together. And for those players to not be considered, it's sad. It's really sad, because they were great players. They were as dominant as our dominant players are today.
Yeah, that's a slap in the face to rugby league's history.
It really is.
This is a problem we have. It's more so in England too. Is there are a lot of people who closely follow English rugby league history over there. You'll find every single club that still exists will have a volunteer historian involved with the club. If they wanted 125 people to do this voting, go around and get those people involved first, because at least you're going to get people with knowledge and research and skill and history all tucked into their brain. They know what they're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll actually get proper answers. I don't think you'll get a Leeds historian saying that Kevin Sinfield would be the best player the club's ever had.
No, and like the thing that I don't understand is, what is this campaign? Because some of the journalists over there get right behind it. They love it, and they literally campaign as well. And I don't understand if the rugby football. It feels to me like the Rugby Football League sat down at one point and said, we need to have someone we can market around, and we need an icon, and we need someone that we can give name recognition to. And Kevin Sinfield has never been in any sort of off-field issues. Played a long time for the one club at Leeds in Super League. Very good point scorer. He won a lot of titles. And it's almost as though they said, let's push him. And so they gave him the golden boot and said he was the best player in the world, which was silly. I mean, it was goofy. But it's continued to happen. I mean, I was saying, I've said a couple of times, like, they've pushed him into roles of the director of rugby, and every single team that he's become the director of rugby for is immediately tanked. They've gone terrible. And now they're pushing him as one of the top 5 players of all time, and I just don't understand why there's that campaign, because I don't think we've ever had anything like that in Australia. I mean, can you think of any player we've had negative campaigns, like we've had a lot of state of origin stuff, like the New South Wales media and stuff didn't like Wally Lewis at all, and talked him down. But I don't think we've ever had a player that has been talked up to the level that Kevin Sinfield is, where it's like this so-so player is elevated to a level where he shouldn't even be. He's not a consideration for the rest of the world.
I'd probably argue that, and this is not the same level, but there was a very strong push for Andrew Johns to be named an immortal. And it was kind of done with very little consideration for too many players who probably deserved to be there before him. But and he was sort of rushed into immortality. I'm still not comfortable with him being named an immortal. I'm not saying he's not worthy, but I think more time needs to pass after a player's retired before you consider them for, some sort of status as great as that is.
Yeah, but the thing about Andrew Johns, there's no doubt he was the best player in the world for a very long time. And there's no doubt that when you line him up against the best halfbacks of all time, I consider him to be the best all-round halfback of all time. His kicking game was, I won't say revolutionary because I think that that's more Ricky Stewart, but he definitely took that and took it to a completely different level, a new level, which is what we demand of our players now, our halfbacks now. And then when you add in the goal kicking, and I think the fact that he took a Newcastle team that at times was absolutely terrible and he had them as a contender for a long, long time for teams that should never have been a contender. I mean, at least Andrew Johns, you can say all that with, and there's also, the things he did at Origin level, and there's also, the 95 World Cup when he was a youngster, and, he did so much at international level. I just think that at least for Andrew Johns, you can make a really, really good case. I mean, I think Andrew Johns is one of the top 5 players of all time. I don't think he's the best player of all time, but I think he's definitely top 5. So at least you're coming from that running.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying, but I was pretty much making a point that he was the only one I can think of that was pushed for some sort of status like that. Like, there were a lot of players who probably could have been given immortality status before Joey got it.
Yeah.
I'm not saying Joey shouldn't have got it. I'm just saying that I think he could have waited a bit longer. I think the one thing that tells you whether a player's an immortal or not is their legacy. And you don't know what a player's legacy is if they're getting immortality status 3 or 4 years after they retired.
Yeah. Look, I think we might have said this on the podcast before. It should be something like 10 years before you're even considered.
Yeah.
And
so that was a thing I had set up, which was you just name 2 players from every decade.
Yeah.
And at the end of every decade, you name 2 from the decade prior, not the one that's just finished, but the one prior to that. So, yeah, everyone's had 10 years to think about it.
Yeah.
And that's all I think I should have done there. But, and Ellery Hanley was an absolute freak of nature. And the thing is, he proved it in the English comp, and the English comp was at its peak in the 80s, like compared to the Australian local comp.
Mm-hmm.
And then as the Australian one started to creep up and be equal and then step forward, he came over to Australia and proved himself over here as well.
Yeah.
And not easy to do.
No.
So for me, he definitely deserves to be there. The rest have got phenomenal records, and you don't need to go on about them. I think, as I said to you in the brief chat before we start the episode, I'm always hesitant about putting wingers in this conversation.
Yeah.
Because more often than not, a lot of the work is done prior to them getting the ball, and those people doing that work should be the ones getting recognised more. And it sounds like I'm taking the shine off Brian Bevan's record. I'm not. It is phenomenal. No one's going to touch it.
Never, ever.
But I wouldn't have a winger in the top 5, to be considered for the greatest ever player.
Yeah, look, it's very hard to justify it, and I say that as someone that only ever wanted to be a winger when I played.
Maybe that's the thing. I'm a bit spiteful because I used to be a centre. So I didn't want to do all the hard work and then have a winger go and do the work. get the glory.
That wouldn't feed me the ball so I could score tries.
Yeah, just hog it.
Yeah, just ball.
I'll do it myself. I don't need no winger.
The thing about their list, right? And when you're talking about the best of all time, you've got you're trying to kick holes in a bloody gold fence, It's difficult, but that's what you got to do. That's the only way you can do it because there's so many great players.
Yeah.
And on that list, 4 of them players are not like one of them. And the one of them is Kevin Sinfield. He just doesn't belong on the list. He doesn't belong on a list of that. I don't think he's a top 50 player from the last 20 years. I don't think he's ever close. I don't know if he'd be in the top 100.
I wouldn't even put him in the top 20 for the best English players since 2000.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would definitely agree with that.
Every English player that's come over to Australia and had a crack over here, bar maybe 1 or 2, would be ahead of him.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Harvey Howard, definitely.
You got Sam, George, Tom, the other Burgess.
Look, they won premierships.
Yeah.
Argue with that.
Even the 37 blokes that are from Northern England that are playing for Canberra at the moment.
Yeah.
Including Long John Williams.
Oh, look, I already put Williams ahead of Kevin Sinfield, just because, he's so important to the next generation of British rugby league players. And look, I don't want to talk out of turn, but it's already begun.
Would you, if you could drop Sinfield for another current English player?
Yeah, a current one.
Who has played also in the NRL.
Mm-hmm.
Would you be more comfortable if Ryan Hall was ahead of Sinfield?
No. Ryan Hall's an English winger, and they're all the same.
Zach Hardiker?
No, you know who I would the two that jump out at me? You'd have to look at James Graham, and you'd have to look at Gareth Widdop. And if I had to choose between the two,
I'm going Graham.
I think I'm going Widdop, hey?
I'm going Graham because he has proved himself in both competitions and at test level.
So I'm going
more consistent and despite being in the forwards, he hasn't been as injury prone either.
That's true, and that's difficult. That's real difficult. I just think that the height of Widdop was higher than Graham in terms of, at one point, Widdop was one of the best players in the world. And for a short period of time, I said he is the best player in the world right now. It wasn't for very long, unfortunately, because he's just so injury prone towards the second half of his career. But I think that when he was at his best, he was just absolutely outstanding. And he had skills that a lot of, better known British players over the last 30 years couldn't get near, quite honestly. And he did it for the Storm. He made that big money move to the Dragons, and it was a similar thing with Storm players. You don't buy Storm players because they never perform anywhere else. He really bucked the trend. He was very good for the Dragons until those injuries started to hit him. And I think that there's a lot that, for a forward, and look, James Graham's a real meat and potatoes sort of player. There's not much, he's not a flashy player. He's a very hard worker and he's a very determined player and he's a great competitor. But I think that the skill factor for Widdop and the fact that he did it in positions where British players for, a couple of generations now have been absolutely abysmal, and he stood shoulder to shoulder with Australian players and with, it wasn't so much Australian players, just with the best in the world. Yeah. And that to me counts for a whole lot. And that's why, and it's very close, but that's probably why I would put Widdop ahead of Graham.
Fair enough. Either way, both of them ahead of Sinfield.
100%. 100%.
So, I'm going to move on to the next point here now.
Okay.
And that is, given how absurd this poll is, I think they should award it to Sinfield.
I think so too. I wonder if we should run a Twitter campaign to make sure Sinfield gets it. And I think he will. I think he will anyway.
Yeah. Just have Sinfield greatest ever.
Yeah.
That'll be the hashtag.
Yeah. And we'll link it up. I'm going to put it across all of the Facebook things as well. Although, man, it would be pretty funny to make sure Wally Lewis won it too, eh? Because they don't want Wally Lewis to win it.
Yeah, they don't. But I don't know. I think it would be a more fitting comedy act, because I don't even think English fans would accept Sinfield over the other four nominees there.
No. Look, I was sitting there, and it's got to have been half an hour ago now, and I saw it pop up on my timeline as the five players, and I retweeted it, and people were just outraged.
Yeah. And all for the same reason, like, what the hell is Sinfield doing there?
Yeah, and the other players weren't even mentioned, I don't think. It was just Sinfield. Do you reckon that we need to now do our top 5 players of all time? And I'm not talking about right now, because I know that it's, for you and me, it's actually important. It's not a throwaway thing.
Well, no, and that's because when it comes to doing something like this, I feel you need to do it right. You need to do the proper thing justice. And too many players have been ignored from that top 5.
Yep.
Like, you can't tell me Brian Bevan was better than Clive Churchill, Dally Messenger, Billy Boston, Neil Fox, Benji Marshall, Puggle Burr. He had a great try scoring record, but those other people were phenomenal in every other way. So even that's just a bit crazy.
So what do you reckon, Ian? What if our next podcast is the top 5 players of all time? Would you be comfortable doing that?
Yeah.
Okay, because, Well,
what we could do, is put down a list of who we think are the 10 best players of all time from let's say the four test nations that have been around the longest. So Australia, England, New Zealand, France.
Yeah.
All right. And we'll get it down to, let's say the top 2 from each poll will go into a final poll.
So we're making sure that we've got international players in there.
We're doing this thing properly.
See, for me, right?
Well, maybe not that way, but maybe have the number of votes. So if someone, the third highest vote getter in Australia gets more votes than the top player from France, then that one goes in instead.
Oh, see, I don't want to leave it to a vote to people, because I don't think there's anybody out there that are going to come up with a better top 5 than you or me.
I know we'll come up with a list. We'll allow people to vote on it, but we will have our own thing. We'll just make it interactive. So
Okay.
we'll have the people's vote.
Yeah.
Based on our list of what we give them.
Yeah.
So we're kind of pigeonholing them a little bit.
Yeah.
And then we'll have our set list of who we decide are the best ever, and we'll compare with what the fans think.
Okay. Because, I mean, doing a top 5, it's going to be really difficult. We're going to leave out players that we both love.
Mm-hmm.
And our lists will obviously be the right ones.
Yeah.
You know?
That sounds like something we could work on.
Okay. Let's make that. Unless something ridiculous happens, like, I don't know, comes out tomorrow, West Tigers have broken the salary cap. We'll do that as our next podcast.
Yeah, that and to think I was sitting here thinking this is going to be a big meltdown for me. If the West Tigers come out and break the salary cap, that will be the biggest meltdown you'll ever get from me.
That will be one.
It'll just start with how?
Yeah.
Potato, what have you done?
Who was the team that they broke the salary cap but they weren't good? Was it Parramatta?
Yeah, they were the ones who got done and went over. I think the Warriors also lost 4 points for going over the cap a few years back.
Yep, they did.
The Bulldogs too. Remember they were way over the cap recently? Thanks to Raylene Castle and Desi Hasler and whoever else was there.
But didn't they get under the cap in time? Like they were told you have to get under by this time.
I think so, but it screwed the club up for several years afterwards.
Yeah, that's true. Look, you know what? Yeah, because I'm thinking of just penalties, but you're right. They're like, they did destroy their cap and they were terrible.
Yeah, and the West Tigers are in that era, have always been in that era.
Yeah.
Like, how many times have you seen articles of West Tigers at the cap limit and you're going, what with?
Yeah, it's weird when you get to that point. Like, you can see, I can look at the Gold Coast Titans and think to myself, I can see where they've spent their money. But then there's other clubs, like the Bulldogs recently, where you looked at their side and you're like, where is the money? Like, who have they spent the money on that they're... I mean, even today, the Bulldogs are still having to deal with some salary cap constraints. And I'm not saying they're over the cap or anything, but there's issues they've still got to churn through to get out of salary cap hell. And you kind of look at their lineup and you say, man, where's the money gone?
Yeah, the Tigers are very much the same at the moment. So much money, so many millions tied up in players who'll be sitting on the pine or playing reserve grade. Just obscene. Thanks, Ivan. I'd hate to be supporting the club that he's now gone to. Oh, hang on.
How dare you?
Mate, there's a lot of juniors in that Penrith club at the moment, which tells me he's stockpiling cash to splash on a whole heap of shit players.
I think the saving grace for us might be that, you know how coaches have those players they like to have around and rely upon and they're just comfortable having in their team. Yeah. I feel like a lot of those players he's had in the past in those positions they're about to retire or they have retired. So I think that might save us from that, but I don't know. Right.
I mean, the one thing you've got to remember is he did form relationships with players at the West Tigers.
Yeah, that is scary. That is scary. Like Moses Mbai, all of a sudden, we pick him up and we put him at fullback.
$100 million a year.
Yeah. Or we buy a Tigers second rower for our centres.
I mean, he did buy back Malachi Watene-Zelezniak.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
And was Tim Grant? Tim Grant was another one he brought back as well.
He was, and I was outraged when that happened. Like, Tim Grant was done when we got rid of him.
Yeah. So, I won't count it out yet. Got to live with some sort of hope.
You're fucking hoping, aren't you? You're hoping.
Oh, like you wouldn't believe.
In about 3 years' time, where I'm like, why the fuck did we just sign, like, Corey Thompson?
Why do we just pay 3 years for Russell Packer? He's already 38.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll be like, why are they giving Benji Marshall a run? What's going on here? He's like 42 now. What's going on?
And why are they trying to get Robbie Farah out of retirement for?
Yeah,
Just let him be.
I, I'm not going to say to you I've been through too much as a Panthers fan because I know what you've been through as a Tigers fan. But man, I
Yeah.
just need just all I need, right? I'm not asking for much. I just need it to not fall apart and be crap. That's all. I don't mind if we just missed the finals or something. Just don't take me back to the Matthew Elliott era where I'm yelling at the TV. That's all I ask for.
I see. That's the thing that happened when Jason Taylor was coaching the Tigers. I went beyond yelling.
Yeah,
I just sat there and watched the TV and just laughed and shook my head.
yeah.
I got past angry.
Well, I think it was. I don't know if we said it in a podcast we recorded or one of those stellar ones that we didn't record, but it's like when you are watching your team play and they win a game and your first thought is, well, that's a week that the shitty coach just bought himself, and that's another week extra before we have this clean out that we need. That's when it's a bad position. That's when you're in the worst place for a club.
That was West Tigers in 2012,
Yeah,
2015,
yeah.
2016, 2017, 2018.
At least you got Maguire now.
Ah, did you see the article from about him earlier today?
No,
He's
what
told
was it?
he's told the Tigers players he wants a second premiership. And my response was, "Oh, it looks like the Tigers are losing another coach."
That's hilarious.
Mate,
It,
you gotta have the cattle, Mick. You
yeah,
know this. You gotta have the cattle, mate.
yeah, and he just doesn't. Unfortunately, it's
No, he is still hamstrung by what Ivan Cleary did with the signings there a few years back. And we're not going to be able to do anything until we've cleared those people off the books, which is going to be another 1 or 2 years.
and the terrible thing about that is too that by the time that has happened, the one of the staples of the club and one of the people that could guide the team to a premiership if they did have the cattle is going to be retired by then in Benji Marshall.
Hmm.
And you know, it sucks when you're in this position.
Yeah, well, as Tigers fans, you're kind of used to it because, it's been an ongoing thing since 2000. I've only seen my team play in the finals 6 times since I was 8 years old.
Mm-hmm.
That's a
That's
long time.
that's crazy. Yeah,
And
yeah,
three of those final series were Balmain. The other three were the West Tigers.
yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, it sucks. Well, that was a infuriating and slightly depressing episode. Wasn't that fantastic?
I know. We're just gonna go and sit down now and contemplate our clubs.
Yeah,
And
I'm just gonna go to the corner and have a bit of a cry.
yeah, yeah. I started having because the Matthew Elliott era, that's my name. So I
Yeah,
started like getting flashbacks and shit, a little bit
cold
of
sweats.
PTSD. Yeah, not good, not
No.
good.
You see, I sit here and I look at something like this greatest players of all time thing,
Hmm.
and knowing that they didn't ask a single historian
Yeah,
makes me wonder why my brain decided to do something so fucking niche like being a rugby league historian when
yeah, I
I'm not
know,
even
right?
going to get asked to help with one of these things.
Like there's part of me that feels like there's so much that the rugby league, the rugby football league puts out, and look, even the NRL, where it gathers a moment. There's a group of people that don't quite know enough about the game, and they get an idea, and by the time it's got enough momentum, where it's just its own thing and it's off and running, and then people that do know about the game that are maybe around the place, it's already off and running now. It's too late because they're down to the final five.
Yes. Ah, frustrating. Anyway, I've got a good note to finish up on.
Okay, yeah.
We received our 51st follower. on our Facebook page during the week,
Oh, nice. Excellent.
and it was Mrs. Nathan.
Ah, it's good to have Mrs. Nathan on board, hey?
Man, I mean that just makes that. I mean, now I'm going to start putting effort in on that Facebook page because I don't want to disappoint her.
Yeah, you kind of run the Facebook page, hey?
I do.
Yeah.
Okay, I better start doing that.
I run the website, which is badly updated. But yeah. Facebook page is on you, buddy.
Okay, good to know we got that sorted out.
Yeah.
It's only been there for a year. Yeah. Hey, now I've got an idea too, and I'm this is business without notice.
Okay.
March is coming up,
Okay.
and should we do something to commemorate 1 year of the podcast?
Oh yeah, we should. What should we do?
I don't know, and I thought maybe we could ask the fans, and in typical format, we'd ask them and then ignore them.
Yeah, I like doing that.
Yeah,
Like I like them feeling as though they're part of this,
yeah.
and then just fucking ignoring them.
And if we don't come up with anything, then we can just fall back on their stuff.
Yeah.
But because we've already said that, we're not going to listen to them. It would just come across as though we come up with that idea anyway, even though I've just said that. People aren't going to know. It's a beautiful system.
It really is. We can just get the suggestion and then just not acknowledge the person who put it forward.
Just like we do with the interns you've got there.
Yeah. Well, I was going to just say like someone like that works at Fox Sports, but you know.
Well, that's true too. I did have some news. One of the interns is going to get promoted.
All right.
Yeah, and so instead of being jabbed with a pointy stick, we're going to put a little bit of a rounded, beveled edge on the stick so that it doesn't hurt as much when they get poked. Yeah,
I reckon that's nice. Hey, it's sometimes you got to show them that you care.
Yeah.
You know, you got to. I always think that to have a good working environment, you need to have the right level of you got to have a camaraderie with your employees, and we don't employ them; they're only interns. But yeah, I think that having a beveled edge on the stick will be good. I almost acknowledged one the other day. Hey, it was weird because I come into the studio because we got studios, and like they were sort of standing there next to the wall, and the door was closing, and I sort of almost made eye contact with them, which would have been a shame because, you know, my eye contact rule, it's like you're gone, you're fired if you make eye contact with me.
Exactly.
But yeah, it's almost acknowledge their presence, which was kind of weird.
That was touch and go.
Yeah, it was. I thought the fact that I didn't have eye contact with them and that they're still around, I think they're still around. I mean, they all look the same to me, like a bunch of NPCs walking around. It was good. I think that we're making progress with how we treat the people that make sure this podcast comes into being.
Exactly. Well, that's a good thing. And finally, one last bit of news. Cricket news. The Big Bash League has ended. And check out this record. The Melbourne Stars have lost again. So I'm going to run you through the Melbourne Stars record for every season of the Big Bash League. Okay, there's been 9 years.
Okay.
Season 1, they lost the semi-final. Season 2, they lost the semi-final. Season 3, they lost the semi-final. Season 4, lost the semi-final. Season 5, they won the semi-final but lost the final. Season 6, lost the semi-final. Season 7, pretty much lost all the time and came dead last. Season 8, lost in the final. And Season 9 tonight, they lost in the final again. So well done, Melbourne Stars. You've got a lovely losing culture.
Wow,
they choked more than St. Helens.
They lost more semis than an octogenarian before Viagra was invented.
That's glorious.
Yeah, Julie will hate hearing this, but I don't give a fuck about the Big Bash, hey. I could not care less. It's just Mickey Mouse crap.
Can I counter that?
Yeah, go
No, I can't. I agree completely. It's shit.
on. They managed to get a game in, hey? It's been raining all day in Sydney. How'd they manage to get a game?
Yeah, because you can't play in the rain. I mean, I used to play cricket and played once in hail.
Yeah.
Still kept
What?
playing.
Just on another sporting note, because we cover all the sports.
Why not?
At the $10 million stadium that Blacktown City Council built for an AFL team that doesn't play within fucking 30 kilometres of Blacktown, they had a women's AFL match on.
Yeah.
And neither team was able to score 10 points. Now, I don't like AFL. It's a shit sport. It's just garbage. But I'm pretty sure you get like 7 points for a goal. Isn't it 7 or 6 points you get for a goal?
It's 6 in the men's.
Yeah.
I haven't studied that for a long time though.
So it's got to be 6 in the women's.
I'd
So if
imagine so.
they couldn't even kick 2 goals. So neither team scored 10 points, sorry, in the whole game.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
What an
can you
advertisement
imagine?
what an advertisement for AFL.
Hey,
What an advertisement for AFL.
I know. That would have been pretty funny to watch.
Do you think they're trying to corner that market that's being left open by rugby union? Rugby union fans, they like watching games where there's no major points
Yeah.
scored and
Yeah.
low scores and close games. Let's see if we can corner that market and have a few close, low-scoring games of our own.
Do you remember when they had rugby union in Australia?
When?
Yeah, exactly.
There we go. Well, people, you can follow us on Twitter at FergoFreakPod. Go to our YouTube page, click the bell icon to get updated whenever we do an episode on there. Subscribe to us on there, all that sort of garbage. We're on LinkedIn, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. Go and click all the like buttons and shit like that. That'd be fantastic. That's how
Anything
much
with
we care.
Yes, anything with like 5 stars, anything with hearts. Give us a well, you know what we need is our first review for 2020 on Apple iTunes. So you go into Apple iTunes and just leave a really, the comment doesn't even matter. It's more the 5 stars. You got to rate it 5 stars and just leave a really random comment like, say that we, I don't know, cured diseases or something like that.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, that would work. Cure diseases. Like, maybe we could be the cure for coronavirus.
Maybe. Man, it would really suck if one of us died with corona now, hey?
Well, maybe we could say it was done to try and help out the greater populace.
Well, that's my big thing when people say, like, what's the best thing you can do for the environment? It's like, first thing is to get sterilised.
Well, that's true.
Mm. But I don't care about the environment. The environment's trying to kill you all the time, so who cares about the environment? It doesn't care about us.
Well, maybe we could say some politically incorrect throwaway catchphrase lines there. I can't think of it off the top of my head, but global warming and stuff like that.
Yeah, I don't know. When people see, if I'm prompted to say something politically incorrect, I can't think of anything. But you're better off just saying, just talk for a bit, and it'll just come out anyway.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
I'm a political fence sitter though.
Yeah, for me, it's always.
I cannot jump one side or the other, knowing that each side are as bad as each other.
Yeah,
so I just like to sit in the middle. I just like to sit in the middle and watch the diehards whinge about one another instead of actually trying to do something constructive.
Yeah, I agree. I will vote for anybody that gives me the best deal for me and no one else.
Yeah, exactly right. That's what it should be.
Yeah.
Right, well, I mean, geez, there's been some advice there for voting.
Yeah.
My God, there's nothing we can't cover.
Exactly. And our next episode is going to be It's kind of going to be a history episode, I guess. So people need to
We
strap in and be ready for that.
we are due for that. We've got a
Yeah.
few history episode ideas up our sleeves, so
Yeah.
we'll see what we can pull out of the hat and bring up there.
Yeah. And I'm just looking at this list now. I will put the link in the show description. So if you want to check it out, just go to the show description and the link will be there from the Rugby Football League and their list of the top 5 players of all time. So you can, do whatever.
Are we going to push for Sinfield?
Yeah, I think let's push for Sinfield. So go on, vote for Sinfield. It's got a little thing that makes sure you're not a robot because we wouldn't want mindless robots ruining this. So let's all jump on and ruin it.
That's right. So let's vote Sinfield for greatest player ever.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm just doing my vote right now.
Yeah, same here. He deserves it. He put in literally hours of work.
Yeah. Imagine see, I don't even think the RFL wants to say Kevin Sinfield's the greatest player ever.
That'd be so funny.
Man, it would be. Imagine that. They have they've got this big gala occasion with the 2 drinks machines out the back. The little fold-out table that they got from a local corner shop for $15, and they've got like some shitty trophy that they've put on there that's a gold trophy that's bronze made out of silver.
Yeah, silver spray paint. I wonder if they buy like a brand new plastic doily from Tesco to chuck over them fold-out tables. That'd be nice.
Well, I reckon they might even go all out and do 2 because they might get 2 of those tables. Because
Yeah,
all the dignitaries want to be there with all their gold medals and paraphernalia on.
I wonder if Fat Prince Harry will turn up for that.
He'll be there.
Yeah.
He'll come from Canada and gate crash Buckingham Palace, maybe.
That would be fucking cool, actually.
It'll be James Graham with the 2 drinks machines and the 2 fold-out tables and the doilies and the shitty trophy and Kevin Sinfield. What an occasion.
My body is ready for this occasion to occur, hey?
All right, so we've got to get a hashtag. We go... Should we have Kev the greatest?
Kevin. What could you do? What about Goat Sinfield?
Goat Sinfield. I like it.
Goat Sinfield. Hashtag Goat Sinfield. Is that what we're going with?
We'll go with Goat Sinfield. I'll do the hashtag now.
Okay.
On the Twitter account.
Yeah, I'll do it on my one as well.
Mate, we're tweeting live. How good's that?
Goat.
I did Goat Sinfield and I did Goat all in uppercase.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was doing.
And the S for Sinfield in uppercase, and now it looks like it says Goats Infield.
Yeah, Goats. I feel like we go with it.
It's like Goats Infield. It's like Ray Warren is talking about some herd of goats running infield.
And I'm underneath it, I'm going to put out a podcast. Fucking.
That's even better. Yeah. Goats Infield.
That's brilliant.
Alrighty. Well, now that we've got our admin done.
Yeah, that's all of the work that we put in.
Yeah. Thanks, people. Get in there and vote for the goat.
Mm.
And when we say goat, we're talking Sinfield.
Yeah.
It would be hilarious if they name him the greatest player of all time.
It really would.
And
I don't reckon a mountain goat could crawl up his forehead. I know you're worried about what I was going to say then.
Well, not worried, just wondering where you were going to go with that.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't stepping in.
Yeah, you're going to leave me hanging out there.
Yeah, I just, you've cast that line.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
I'll let you see what you do with it. Alrighty, people, thanks for tuning in. Vote for the GOAT, and we'll catch you next time.